My name is Daniel, and what I'm about to share is not just a story, it is the most painful and shocking truth I've ever lived through. It begins in the last days of my father's life, a man I thought I knew better than anyone else in the world. He was my hero, my guide, and the man who taught me how to stand on my own 2 feet. Yet on his deathbed, he confessed something that shattered everything I believed about my family, my childhood, and even myself. My father had always been a man of silence. He wasn't cold, but he wasn't the type to wear his emotions on his sleeve either. He loved us, but he showed it in small gestures, fixing things around the house, saving money for our education, and sitting quietly at the dinner table while we all talked. His eyes always carried a weight, a shadow I could never explain. As a child, I thought it was just the stress of working long hours. As a teenager, I believed he was simply a man of few words. But as I stood by his hospital bed years later, listening to his ragged breath, I realized that silence had been holding something far darker. It was a winter evening when the doctor called me, saying my father didn't have much time left. I rushed to the hospital, my heart pounding in my chest. When I entered the room, he was lying there, frail and weak, his once strong hands trembling as they gripped the blanket. My mother sat beside him, tears streaming silently, and my younger sister Rachel held his hand tightly as if she could stop him from slipping away. He asked to speak to me alone. His voice was weak, almost a whisper, but his eyes, those heavy, shadowed eyes, locked on mine with a piercing intensity I will never forget. "Daniel," he said, "before I go, you must know the truth. You deserve to know everything." I didn't understand at first. What truth? What could possibly be so urgent now, in his final hours? But as he began to speak, the world I thought I knew collapsed beneath me. He told me that the man I called my grandfather, my mother's father, was not actually my grandfather at all. In fact, my mother was not who I thought she was. He paused, breathing heavily, before telling me the first shocking confession: I was not his biological son. My mind went blank. For a moment, I thought his illness was causing confusion, but the pain and shame in his eyes told me he was clear, painfully clear. He continued. Years ago, before I was born, he had fallen in love with a woman who was already married. That woman was my mother. Their relationship had been a forbidden secret. She became pregnant with me, and to protect her marriage, my father stepped aside, allowing another man, her husband, to raise me as his child. But fate twisted things again. My mother's husband died unexpectedly, and my father returned, marrying her officially. He raised me as his son, never revealing the truth. I sat frozen, trying to breathe, trying to absorb what he was saying. But he wasn't finished. With tears in his eyes, he told me that the reason he had lived with such silence, with such a burden in his heart, was because there was more, something darker. He said that when he was younger, he had been involved with dangerous people. He never gave details, but I could sense it had to do with crime, with choices he regretted every single day of his life. One night, something went horribly wrong. A man had died. My father never said if it was intentional or an accident, but he confessed that he carried the guilt of that night for decades. That was the shadow in his eyes, the silence at every family dinner, the reason he could never fully look me in the face when I asked him about his past. As he spoke, his breathing grew weaker. I wanted to scream, to ask questions, to demand the full story, but I couldn't bring myself to break him further. He was confessing because he wanted peace before he left this world. His last words to me were, "Daniel, you must live freely. Do not carry my sins. Forgive me, even if I could never forgive myself." And with that, he closed his eyes, and I lost him forever. The funeral was a blur. My mother wept uncontrollably, but part of me kept wondering if she had known all along. I wanted to confront her, but grief kept me silent. After the burial, when relatives and neighbors left, I searched through my father's belongings. Somewhere inside, I hoped to find clarity, a letter, a journal, anything that explained the truth he had only half revealed. In an old wooden box hidden under his bed, I found a bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon. They were addressed to my mother, written in my father's handwriting, but they were never sent. The letters revealed everything. He had loved her from the very beginning, even when she belonged to another man. He had lived every day in fear that I would hate him if I learned the truth. And worse, in one letter, he confessed the full story of the man who had died. It wasn't a stranger, it was the husband of my mother. The man I had grown up believing was my father. The truth hit me like a storm. My father hadn't just fallen in love with a married woman. He had killed her husband, the man who stood in the way of their love. Whether it was in a fit of rage, an accident, or something darker, I still don't know. But my mother knew. She knew everything. She had lived with the man who killed her husband, and together they raised me, hiding the truth from me all my life. I confronted my mother. At first, she denied it, but when I showed her the letters, her face broke. She sobbed like I had never seen before. Through tears, she told me it had been an accident, that my father never meant to kill him. They had argued late at night, tempers flaring, and in one tragic moment, everything changed. She swore he had lived with guilt every single day after that. She begged me not to hate him, not to tarnish the memory of the man who had sacrificed his life to raise me. But how could I not? My entire life felt like a lie. The man I admired, respected, and loved had hidden the darkest secret imaginable. Yet even in my anger, I remembered his last words, "Do not carry my sins. Forgive me." It took years before I found peace. At first, I carried rage, confusion, and betrayal. But slowly, I realized that my father was not a monster, he was a man broken by love, regret, and guilt. He made terrible mistakes, but he also gave me everything he had left in his heart. Today, I share this story not to excuse him, but to show the complexity of human choices. We all hide secrets. We all carry burdens. And sometimes, the people we love most are fighting battles we can never imagine. What my father confessed on his deathbed shocked me, destroyed me, and yet, it also taught me the most powerful lesson of all. Forgiveness is not about forgetting, it's about freeing yourself from the chains of someone else's mistakes. And so, I live on, not as the son of a perfect man, but as the son of a flawed human who loved me in the only way he knew how.